Doctor Who is coming to Magic the Gathering, and today Wizards of the Coast has previewed a ton of cards from the upcoming Commander set, including all the cards that you're going to find in the pre-constructed deck Timey-Wimey. So in this video, I'm going to cover all the cards that were previewed today. We don't have the full deck list of the Timey-Wimey pre-constructed deck yet, but we have all the cards, and we have all the Doctors, most of the companions, a bunch of new sagas, and so much more to talk about today. It's a lot, so buckle up. But before we begin, two quick reminders. First, you can find all the Doctor Who previews over at mtgpreviews.com. And secondly, if you want to pre-order these sweet new cards, you can head on over to our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. Alright, we begin by checking out all of the Doctors. So we have the first Doctor all the way to the 13th, I believe. And then two bonus ones who I don't think they fit in the number system, but they are also Doctors. I don't know much about the lore, so let me know in the comments section what the lore is about all these Doctors, I guess. So the first Doctor is a 3-mana Azorius 2/2 legendary creature Time Lord Doctor. I think all of them are legendary creature Time Lord Doctors, but we'll double check if there's any difference on all of them. But anyway, when the first Doctor enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a card named TARDIS. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle, and then whenever you cast a spell with Cascade, put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature. Now, the TARDIS that the first Doctor fetches up is a 2-mana colorless vehicle with flying, 2/4. Whenever TARDIS attacks, if you control a Time Lord, the next spell you cast this turn has Cascade, and you may Planeswalk. And Planeswalk is a special mechanic tied to an optional rule set called Plane Chase. So if you're running with Plane Chase in your Commander deck, then you can use Planeswalk, otherwise you just ignore that text. But the first Doctor is pretty darn sweet. For 3 mana, you get to tutor up a really powerful vehicle that cascades, and then whenever you're cascading, you get to put +1/+1 counters on artifacts and creatures you control. So it's efficient. It's not super powerful or anything, but it is pretty mana efficient in what it's trying to do. It gets a cascade engine going, so that can lead to other Cascade Matters cards or Exile Matters cards. So it's a nice, efficient engine. Now, the second Doctor is also Azorius, but 4 mana this time. 2/4. Players have no maximum hand size and has an ability called How Civil of You. At the beginning of your end step, each player may draw a card. Each opponent who does can't attack you or permanents you control during their next turn. So this is a group hug card. It can draw everybody cards, but it's also a political card because it also provides a little bit of pillow fort for anybody who takes your offer on drawing cards. And who's going to say no to some free card draw? So I like this card. It's pretty generic, it's not particularly powerful, but it could be an interesting choice to add to, say, a Super Friends deck. People will always want to be drawing cards, but then they can't attack your Planeswalkers. So this is a nice, friendly sort of pillow fort card for Super Friends, and it's just a pretty silly, fun group hug card or pillow fort card, however you want to see it. Next up, we have the third Doctor. This one is Simic, 4-mana Simic 2/2. It has Trample, and the third Doctor gets +1/+1 for each non-creature permanent you control. And when the third Doctor enters the battlefield, create your choice of a clue token, a food token, or a treasure token. So you cast it, you make a token, and it's immediately a 3/3 Trampler, which is not very big, but in a deck that makes a lot of non-creature tokens, like Lonus, for example, just pooping out them clue tokens or whatever, or a food deck or a treasure deck, this is straight up just a big old finisher. This can easily be a 15/15 Trampler. Now, is that good enough for a 4-mana creature to just be a big old dumb beat stick as a finisher for your food, clue, or treasure deck? Maybe, yeah, it's fine. It's not super exciting for me, but it's fine. The fourth Doctor is also Simic, 4-mana, 4/4. It has 2 abilities. The first ability says you can look at the top card of your library at any time, and then its second ability says, would you like a ... Once each turn, you may play a historic land or cast a historic spell from the top of your library. When you do, create a food token. So this is yet another Simic value engine, but this one actually cares about a specific theme that Simic value engines generally just don't do. It cares about historic, and it cares about top deck manipulation. So if you have a historic card on top of your library, you get to cast it for free or play it for free once a turn. So that is good card advantage. It's even better if you have flash enablers, so you can start casting them on opposing turns as well to get more triggers out of its ability. And it makes food tokens, which is probably the weakest of the 3 types of tokens, but it is still good value nonetheless. So I like it. It's a Simic value engine, but it focuses on a very specific theme, 2 themes actually, and that's really cool. It makes the deck very interesting. The 5th Doctor goes back to Azorius, so this is 4 mana, 2/2, and it has a peaceful coexistence. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that didn't attack or enter the battlefield this turn. Untap those creatures. Now this card is quite interesting, probably not super powerful, but definitely interesting. It rewards you for not attacking and I guess not blinking your creatures, but the reward is quite darn good. If your creatures have tap abilities like generating mana or untapping other things or, whatever, you get to untap all of them once per turn, which is great. That means you get to use their abilities more than once. And then adding +1/+1 counters onto your stuff enables +1/+1 counter synergies and just grows your army so that eventually, when peace is no longer an option, you can just start smashing with a lethal army. Like I said, I don't think this card is super strong or anything, but it is a really cool effect that we haven't seen before, and it is something fun to build around. The 6th Doctor goes back to Simic. This is a 6 mana Simic 3/3, and it has Time Lord's Prerogative. Whenever you cast a historic spell, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. This ability triggers only once each turn. So the 6th Doctor is all about tokens and historic. So it's time to bust out your doubling seasons, your parallel lives, all those good stuff, because you're going to be making huge tokens of all your permanents that are historic. Simic tokens is a time-honored tradition. It is a casual favorite. Adrix and Nev players rejoice because the 6th Doctor is doing the same stuff. At 6 mana, it is definitely fairly costed. It's also just a 3/3. It has no inherent protection. So if it's allowed to pop off, I think the person who pops off of it deserves the win. It's very sweet. I think Phil will love this card. It looks fun. The 7th Doctor goes back to Azorius. It's 5 mana, 3/6. And this one says, whenever the 7th Doctor attacks, choose a card in your hand. Defending player guesses whether the card's mana value is greater than the number of artifacts you control. If they guessed wrong, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast a spell this way, investigate. So this is a cute ability, but I don't think it's a very good card. This is a 5 mana creature that's a 3/6, no evasion, has an attack trigger, and then at best case, you get to cast a spell for free from your hand, which is quite good. But worst case, you just investigate, and I don't know how many times your opponents are going to guess wrong. You can use it politically, though. You could just say, hey, can you just guess wrong for me? And then help me cast out my hands, and maybe your opponents will pity you because you're playing the 7th Doctor. I don't know. But yeah, this card doesn't seem very strong. It seems cute, though. It's very, very funny. I like it. Moving on, we have the 8th Doctor. And by the way, each of the Doctor cards have the regular art, and then they have the showcase version with a special TARDIS frame. So we don't have the 8th Doctor artwork yet, I don't think. But we have the showcase version of it here. So again, this is a Azorius Doctor. It's 6 mana this time. It's a 4/4, and it says when the 8th Doctor enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. Once during each of your turns, you may play a historic land or cast a historic permanent spell from your graveyard. If you do, it gains if this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So for 6 mana, in your historic deck, you have a nice little recursion engine, card advantage engine. It's nothing super great. I mean, it's a 6 mana spell. They will get 1 thing on each of your turns back. It's fine. It's alright. I don't know. Let's move on to the 9th Doctor. And this one's not very good. Alright, the 9th Doctor. So I think this is when the reboot happens with Doctor Who. After a long hiatus, they came back on the show. And so the previous incarnations from 1 to 8, those were all about historic matters. And then we're going to see the other Doctors are going to be focusing on other stuff, I believe. I think it focuses mostly about casting stuff with Suspend. This one's the 9th Doctor. It's an Izzet incarnation, ooh la la, 3 mana, 2/4 haste, and it has Into the TARDIS. Whenever the 9th Doctor becomes untapped during your untap step, you get an additional upkeep after this step. So this is basically a Paradox Haze in your command zone, which is very sweet. However, you do have to untap the Doctor, either by attacking with him, which, I mean, it's a 2/4, so it's going to need evasion to survive combat most of the time, or if you have any way of tapping him and then untapping him for value, like a Springleaf Jump, for example, then you can do it. So you have to work a little bit for your Paradox Haze in the command zone, but I mean, Paradox Haze in the command zone, pretty darn strong. Double the upkeeps is super, super sweet. And then also, it is a triggered ability, so then you could, copy that with a Strionic Resonator and all that good stuff too. Upkeeps work very well with Suspend because you remove a Suspend counter on your upkeep, so it works with the time travel mechanic that is new to the modern Doctors and new to this set. So yeah, this card is just super efficient, makes you work for it a little bit, but the payoff is quite sweet. The 10th Doctor is the face card of the Precon. It's 5 mana, It's a 3/5, and it has 2 abilities. Allons-y? Is that how you say it? It's French. I should know this, but I don't. Allons-y? Whenever you attack, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Put 3 time counters on it. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. So this is what we were talking about earlier. This is all about timey-wimey stuff. It's all about time travel. It's all about exiling spells with Suspend counters on them. And what Suspend is, it means that when you suspend a card, you put it in exile, and then you put time counters onto it. And then on your upkeep, you remove a time counter. And then when you remove the final time counter from an exiled spell, you get to cast it for free. And then if it's a creature, it has haste. And then the second ability is Timey-Wimey. Hey, that's the name of the Precon. For 7 mana, you can time travel 3 times, activate only as a sorcery. And time travel is a new mechanic that you're only going to find in the Doctor Who Universes Beyond set. And this ability says, for each suspended card you own and each permanent you control with a time counter on it, you may add or remove a time counter. Then do it 2 more times. So this deck is all about suspending cards. It's going to be generating a lot of mana advantage because you get to cast these spells for free, and suspending them costs a lot less than just hard casting them from your hand. And also you're going to be generating card advantage because the way you're going to be drawing your cards is you're going to be suspending them instead of putting them to your hand. And then the time travel aspect allows you to cast those suspended spells faster than you otherwise would. So it's a roundabout way of doing some cool timey-wimey stuff. You're going to be suspending spells, and you're going to be casting them faster than people would expect you to actually resolve those spells. It's really neat, and it looks like a very fun Precon to play. The 11th Doctor goes back to Azorius. This is a 3 mana 3/2, and has 2 abilities. The first ability is I Am Talking. Whenever the 11th Doctor deals combat damage to a player, you may exile a card from your hand with a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. And its other ability says you can pay 2 mana, target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. So this Doctor also exemplifies the theme of the Precon, which is about suspending things and then casting stuff from exile. All super fun stuff. It's a 3/2 with a combat damage trigger, but you can always kind of guarantee the combat damage by paying 2 mana to give itself unblockable. And then the payoff is it allows you to spend any card from your hand. You don't have to pay its mana cost at all. It's just going to stick around in exile and eventually be cast for free. So it's really good mana advantage, and it also allows you to turn cards without Suspend into cards with Suspend, which opens synergy potential. So overall, quite good. The 12th Doctor has a guitar, very sweet. It's a 5 mana Is It Doctor. It's a 4/4, and the first spell you cast from anywhere other than your hand each turn has Demonstrate. When you cast that spell, you may copy it. If you do, choose an opponent to also copy it. A copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So if you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, such as the Exile Zone when you're suspending a bunch of spells, and then casting them from the exile zone, you get to Demonstrate. So you can choose to give an opponent a copy of it, but then you get also a copy of it too. And then whenever you copy a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on the 12th Doctor. So this is a nice political Doctor. You can help out an opponent or just kind of help yourself twice. Let's say you copy a removal spell and then you allow an opponent to copy it and just say, hey, let's remove our mutual opponent's stuff. That's a great way to triple up on the value of a removal spell. So this card is very political, very tricksy, very manipulative, very sweet. Moving on to the 13th Doctor, we're back to Simic, and this is a 3 mana 2/2 with 2 abilities. The first ability is Paradox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and Team TARDIS. At the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control with a counter on it. Now, this card seems actually quite powerful. It has +1/+1 counter synergies of just untapping all your creatures on your end step. That's a very powerful ability all by itself. And then just being able to put counters on stuff all by itself is also really good, as long as you're casting stuff from suspend and whatnot. So yeah, this card is really sweet and mana efficient. Just being able to mass untapping all your mana dorks, for example, you're in green, can be really powerful. So yeah, this one is quite sweet. So those were 13 doctors, but then we have more doctors, and let me know in the comments section where they fit. I think they are iterations of the same being entity known as the Doctor. So they're all doctors, but they don't have numbers because I guess they're not cool enough to get numbers. I don't know. Or maybe this one's like the 8th Doctor and the number system doesn't make sense. I don't know. Explain to me in the comment section why this one doesn't have a number to it and other ones do. This is weird. Or is this a different being altogether? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section. Anywho, the card itself is the War Doctor. This is a 4-mana Boros Doctor, so the first time we see a non-blue one, I think this is just red and white. It's a 3/5, and it says whenever one or more other permanents phase out, and whenever one or more other cards are put into exile from anywhere, put a time counter on the War Doctor. And then whenever the War Doctor attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of time counters on it to any target. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. So this card rewards you for phasing out and exiling stuff by just being a repeatable damage engine each time it's attacking. It collects time counters on it, then it's attacking, it blows up something, and that's exiled instead, so that grows the War Doctor and just gets better and better at killing things, which I guess makes sense for a War Doctor. So this is a really interesting design. It's probably going to be a kill on sight commander as soon as you reveal it, because nobody likes seeing a removal on this stick in the command zone. Trust me, as a Toshiro player, I get that a lot. But it is a really cool, interesting aspect to bring Boros to. I really like this design quite a lot. This is probably my favorite Doctor out of all of them, to be honest, even though I would be tempted to build it, but then I wouldn't, because like I said, people don't like it when commanders remove stuff on the card text itself. All right, moving on, we have the Fugitive Doctor. And this is another one that's not blue. This one's Gruul, actually. It's a 5-mana 4/4 that says when the Fugitive Doctor enters the battlefield, you investigate, and then whenever the Doctor attacks, you may sacrifice a clue. When you do, target instant or sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback 3 mana to a red and a green until end of turn. So this is like Clue Spellslinger, which is a very interesting take on two very different mechanics. You sacrifice clues, you get to cast stuff from flashback, but you still have to pay the mana for it. It's still 4 mana each time. But yeah, that's a very interesting way to marry two things that you otherwise wouldn't really see that often. This would be a lot easier to build, I think, if it wasn't blue. Because blue and clues work very well together. Green and blue and clues work very well together too. So it's definitely doable. It's a very interesting design. I'm really excited to see actually how it gets built. Very cool. I like this one a lot. So those were all the Doctors that we've gotten so far from the Universes Beyond set. But then we also have Doctor Companions. And Doctor Companions have a specific mechanic called Doctor's Companion at the bottom of each one that says you can have 2 commanders if the other is the Doctor. So this is like a riff on the partner mechanic. You can have the Doctor, you can have a Doctor in the command zone, and if you have a Doctor in the command zone, you can have a Doctor's Companion also in the command zone. But you can mix and match however you want. So you can have any Doctor and any Doctor's Companion, and you can put them both together in the command zone if one of them is a Doctor and one of them is a Doctor's Companion. So the first Doctor Companion is Joe Grant. This is a 3-mana white 3/2 legendary creature, human soldier, that says each historic card in your hand has cycling 2 and a white. So 3 mana total, you can just cycle it away and then draw a card instead. And then whenever you cycle a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Joe Grant. So this one obviously works better with the older Doctors and cares about historic cards. And it can actually grow into a lethal threat very quickly. There's a lot of ways to just cycle away like your entire library to make this instantly lethal. I think Fluctuator is a big one, and then New Perspectives, I think there's the other one that just allows you to cast or cycle your stuff for free. So if you have any of those on the battlefield and you have like a cycle deck, then I think Joe Grant is just going to start one-shotting people pretty efficiently. So yeah, I think this one's actually quite powerful. The next one is Perry Brown. This is a 4-mana white 2/3 legendary creature human that says the first historic spell you cast each turn has Convoke. So you can tap your creatures to help pay for the mana cost of it, and it has Doctor's Companion. So this is historic, but Convoke. So it's historic, go wide, historic tokens maybe. And this is a powerful one. It's a nice mana discount on the first historic spell that you cast each turn. So historic plus go wide. That's a cool way of branching out with the historic archetype, basically. The next one is yet another white companion. This is Tegan Jovanka. It's a 3-mana white 2/2 legendary creature human, and it has Braveheart. Whenever you attack, target attacking historic creature gets +1/+1 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is a great companion for all those doctors that actually have to get in there with an attack trigger. It makes them indestructible, so at least they don't die when they're attacking, so that's kind of nice. So this is definitely one of the weaker companions. It doesn't ask too much of you in terms of deck building restrictions, but it doesn't offer too much in return either. Next, we have our first red companion. This is Amy Pond. It's a 3-mana red 2/2 legendary creature human. It has partner with Rory Williams. So when this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Rory into their hand from their library, then shuffle. So this is a very cute one because you can have Amy Pond in the command zone, cast Amy Pond, and then if you have Rory Williams in your library, you can just yoink out Rory from your library and put it into your hand. So it's nice card advantage, and we'll always make sure you get Rory with Amy at any given time, even though they're both not in the command zone. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like you're playing with 3 commanders at that point. And whenever Amy Pond deals combat damage to a player, choose a suspended card you own and remove that many time counters from it. So if you attack with Amy and you deal 2 damage, then you can remove 2 time counters from a suspended card, so that's really sweet. And then if you pump up Amy further, you can remove even more time counters each time you deal more damage with her. So yeah, this is one of the stronger ones, I think, and it works really well with like the timey-wimey ones, the ones that care about casting stuff from suspend, removing time counters, adding time counters, that sort of stuff. Yeah, this one is really nice. The next one is Ace, Fearless Rebel. This is the first green companion. It's 4 mana, 2/2, and it has Nitro 9. Whenever Ace attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Ace. Then it fights up to 1 target creature defending player controls. So this companion works well with the doctors that care about like clue tokens and treasures and all that good stuff. You get to sacrifice like a random clue or whatever, and then you get to grow Ace and just repeatedly take out defending creatures, which is actually really powerful. It's super efficient. It's 4 mana, so it's like not like incredibly busted or anything, and it starts off as a 2/2, so you really need to grow Ace or give her evasion or something like that before she can really start being oppressive at the table. But once this is like a 5/5 or something like that, it's going to be taking out a lot of creatures very efficiently, and that's really sweet. Next up, we have another green companion. This is Jamie McCrimmon. Is this like the first male companion? I think so. Is it? I think so. Or maybe Rory is another one. I don't know. Anyway, it's a 3 mana 2/2 legendary creature human warrior, and it has trample. And whenever you cast a historic spell, Jamie gets +X until end of turn, where X is that spell's mana value. So this is for the historic doctors. It's historic matters, and it's just a big beat stick. It's a big beat stick that has trample and just deals a lot of damage from the command zone. It's not that much damage, but I mean, if you can cast like really big historic spells, then it could be a lot of damage, I guess. If you cast like Draco or something, you could do +16/+16 and just destroy somebody's face, I guess. It's cute. I don't know. It's very straightforward and cool. Nice. Next, we have another green companion. This is Susan Foreman. It's a 2 mana 1/1 legendary creature Time Lord. Wait a minute. Is this a doctor? Is this? I don't know. I mean, I thought the doctor was the only time. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Let me know in the comment section. If you would planeswalk, instead look at the top 2 cards of your planar deck. Put one on the bottom of your planar deck and the other on top, then planeswalk. You can also tap it to add 1 green mana, and it's a Doctor's Companion. So the first part of text is only if you're running with the Plane Chase optional rule set, which I assume 99% of you are never going to do. Plane Chase is super fun. I highly recommend giving it a go, but I just know my audience. Most of y'all don't care about that, so you can ignore about that. But even without that, you just have a mana dork in the command zone. You're always going to have on turn 2, you have a mana dork that can tap for 1 green mana. And that's not bad. It's not like super interesting, but like always having that turn 2 mana dork play, it's like having a Mind Stone at all times in the command zone, guaranteeing that your turn 2 play is going to be a mana dork. That's actually like really good. I think this card is like actually gas. It's like the most boring of all of them, but it's super gas. Obviously, it's the most interesting if you're playing the Plane Chase rules. I think you have to run Susan at that point. You know, I mean, you don't have to, but you should. I want you to. But yeah, even without that, I think just like a 2-mana Tangled Florahedron in your command zone is actually like good. That's actually solid. All right, the next one is Clara Oswald, and this doesn't have a color. It's a colorless companion. 6 mana, 2/6. And it's a legendary creature, human advisor, and it has Impossible Girl. If Clara is your commander, choose a color before the game begins. Clara is the chosen color. So that's actually really neat. It can be any color you want. So if you want to build like a Boros Doctor deck or whatever, or just anything, Clara can be whatever Doctor companion you need it to be to fulfill the color requirements. So if a triggered ability of a Doctor you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So Clara is just like the Swiss Army knife of Doctor companions, it seems like. It can be any color you need, so it can fit any role. And then it's incredibly generic in terms of how it helps. Is it a historic Doctor? Then it's going to help with your historic triggers. Is it a suspend Doctor? Then it's going to help with suspend. It can do whatever your Doctor needs. Clara is there to help you out. Although the flexibility comes at a high price, it is 6 mana. 6 mana is a lot for any creature. But I think I really like the flexibility here. It's really cool that it just can be the ideal candidate for any Doctor really out there. It's never going to be the best. It's a jack of all trades, but it's always great in any situation. All right, so we covered a bunch of Doctor companions and all the Doctors, and now these are the rest of the cards. Crack in Time is a 4-mana white enchantment with Vanishing 3. So Vanishing is this enchantment enters the battlefield with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. And when Crack in Time enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, exile target creature an opponent controls until Crack in Time leaves the battlefield. So this is like an Oblivion ring that keeps on ringing until eventually it vanishes and everything returns, which is really powerful. It's actually like a Parallax Wave or something. I don't know. There's like a old white enchantment that also has Vanishing, I think, or Fading. I don't know the difference between the two. That kind of does the same thing, but this is just like a really good way of just clearing the board, at least temporarily. And then eventually Crack in Time leaves and your opponents get the stuff back. But with the time travel mechanic and certain other cards, you can actually add additional time counters onto Crack in Time to get even more value out of it. So imagine it has Vanishing 3, but then you put like 3 more Vanishing counters on it. That's going to be like super good. It's going to remove up to 6 things before it finally returns everything at once over 6 turns. Like that's actually really gas. So Crack in Time is low key like super good. Next up, we have Everybody Lives! Hooray! This is a 2-mana white instant that says, all creatures gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Players gain hexproof until end of turn. Players can't lose life this turn, and players can't lose the game or win the game this turn. So this is my pick for the most interesting card that was previewed today. It just does such really weird things so symmetrically, and we just haven't seen a card like this before. Giving the entire board hexproof, indestructible, preventing life loss, preventing somebody from losing the game or winning the game. You can use that to protect yourself, obviously, but you can also use that to protect somebody else from losing, garner political favor. If an arch enemy, for example, is wiping the board of all creatures, you can save everybody's creatures so that you can take out the arch enemy on their combat phase. You can use this as a fog to protect yourself. If somebody wins with like a Thoracle or something, you can prevent that as well. It's just super, super weird. It's a cool card. I don't think it's like an overpowered card or anything like that, but its applications are very interesting and very cool. I very much want to get my hands on a copy of this and try it out in one of my decks. All right, moving on, we have another really powerful new sorcery. This is Everything Comes to Dust, and it costs 10 mana, it's 7 and triple white, but it has Convoke, so your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. So if you tap 10 creatures and 3 of them are white, you can cast the spell for free. And what it does is exiles all creatures except for those that share a creature type with a creature that can invoke the spell, all artifacts, and all enchantments. So this might end up being one of my favorite board wipes in a go wide deck. For example, if you're like going humans with Taurens and you're just pooping out human tokens left and right, how sweet is it that now you could just like wipe the board of opposing creatures, leaving yours untouched? And it also removes artifacts and enchantments and your Taurens, so you don't really run that many artifacts and enchantments as well. And it exiles them instead of just destroys them, so they can't ever be recurred. This card is going to be super gas. Now, obviously, you have to be focused on a certain creature type. If you're just like go wide tokens, but it's like Saprolings and Elves and whatever, then it's not that great. But like if you're like Selesnya Elves, or if you're like Selesnya Taurens, humans, if you're just like any creature type and you're go wide on it, this card can be super strong, like one of the best cards in your entire deck. I think this card is super gas. It's very, very narrow, but in the decks that it's going to be good in, it's going to be literally like the best card in that deck. Next, we have the Caves of Androzani. This is a saga. 4 mana white saga. It has 4 chapters. The first chapter says put 2 stun counters on each of up to 2 target tapped creatures. The second and third chapters both say for each non-saga permanent, choose a counter on it. You may put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. And then finally, chapter 4, you search your library for a doctor card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. All right, so this saga is a lot. Basically, it screws over 2 tapped creatures. You're going to be like, hey, you're not going to be untapping for like 4 turns, buddy. Sorry about that. So it like perma stuns two target creatures, which is great, that are tapped first. They have to be tapped. And then you get to essentially proliferate. You get to put an additional counter on all stuff that have counters on them, which can be really good. If you just like have an army of creatures with +1/+1 counters, now they have another counter of them. If you have better, more spicy counters, you can copy those too. So it's essentially proliferate twice. And then chapter 4, you get to find a doctor. That's always good value. If you're like a doctor deck, finding a doctor card is pretty sweet. So yeah, that's a lot of value for a 4 mana saga. This seems like a really good card. I do think you need to have doctors in your deck for the saga to be worth it. But if you are a doctor deck, then it's going to be really good. Next up, we have another white saga. This is Knight of the Doctor. This is a 6 mana white saga with only 2 chapters. It has Destroy All Creatures for Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is Return Target Legendary Creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put your choice of a First Strike, Vigilance, or Lifelink counter on it. Now, 6 mana, wrath the board, and then reanimate something and make it slightly better is like borderline playable all by itself, to be honest, like the 1-2 punch of it. But because it's attached to a saga, this is a board wipe attached to a saga that its first chapter immediately does the board wiping. Usually sagas like take 1 or 2 turns before they wipe the board. Because it's a first chapter saga, like this card can be like super oppressive if we're running it in decks that can like blink the saga or remove a chapter, the saga counter or whatever lore counter off it and repeatedly like wipe the board over and over again. So this card can be like low-key oppressive, but like even if you're playing it straight, it seems like actually good value to me. Next up, we have another white saga. This is the War Games. It's a 4 mana saga with 4 chapters. Chapter 1 is each player creates 3 tapped 1/1 white warrior creature tokens. The tokens are goaded for as long as the War Games remains on the battlefield. Then chapter 2 and 3 are put a +1/+1 counter on each warrior creature. And then chapter 4 is you may exile a non-token creature you control. When you do, exile all warriors. So this card looks pretty darn powerful. You get to put a lot of creatures onto the battlefield. You get to pump them up. They're all goaded, so they must attack each other. And then before the goad wears off, you can exile a creature you control to make sure those warriors aren't coming your way immediately afterwards. That's a lot of value, all things considered, for just a 4 mana spell. It is a little bit slow. It is obviously telegraphed, but I don't know. This card looks actually quite good. I just don't know the deck I'd put it in. Next, we have another white saga. This is Trial of a Time Lord. It's a 3 mana saga, 4 chapters. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 all say exile target non-token creature an opponent controls until Trial of a Time Lord leaves the battlefield. And then chapter 4, starting with you, each player votes for innocent or guilty. If guilty gets more votes, The owner of each card exiled with Trial of the Time Lord puts that card on the bottom of their library. So this is a very cute political card. It could basically just like ruin one opponent's day. You could just be like, hey, I'm going to exile Bob's creatures, and then we're all going to vote guilty. And then those creatures are just gone. So you get to remove 3 creatures for 3 mana. If you can just convince 2 of the 3 opponents at the table to vote guilty, you can just really mess up one person's day. Otherwise, if you're removing like 1 from each person, they're probably not going to vote guilty. They're probably going to vote innocent, and they'll get their stuff back. But I mean, it is a nice way of delaying that at the very least. But yeah, you can just use this to like ruin the archenemy. This could be just written as ruin the archenemy for 3 mana, and that's pretty sweet. Next, we have a blue saga. This is An Unearthly Child. It's a 3 mana blue saga, and it has 3 chapters, and each one is the exact same. It says reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a doctor card, a card with a doctor's companion, or a vehicle card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So over 3 turns, you're going to get 3 cards, and they're going to be somewhat specific. They're either going to be a doctor companion, or a vehicle. And in the saga that you actually care to run this in, you're going to be all about doctors and doctor companions and vehicles. So it makes sense. I mean, assume the vehicle is just the TARDIS, and then the rest are just going to be doctors and doctor companions. So in a doctor deck / doctor companion deck, this makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, you probably will be skipping it. Maybe actually changelings, but even so, I don't know. Probably not. All right. Oh, actually, Shurikai vehicles. This actually seems kind of playable. You'll just get 3 vehicles from your deck for 3 mana over 3 turns. That's actually not bad. All right, moving on. We have Nanogene Conversion. This is a 4 mana blue sorcery that says choose target creature you control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn, except it isn't legendary. Now, unfortunately, this is a sorcery, so it cuts down on instant speed shenanigans, but it could still be very powerful. I have no idea what I do with this card, but copying some really important creature in like a token deck could be really sweet. It could be as easy as like some creature that gives all your creatures +2/+2, and then you just make all your go wide tokens into that creature, and then you just kill everybody very efficiently. It probably has even cooler effects that I can't think of about, but like let me know in the comment section what you would do with this card. Next up, we have Reverse the Polarity. This is a 3 mana blue instant that says choose 1, counter all other spells, switch each creature's power and toughness until end of turn, or creatures can't be blocked this turn. So it's a cancel at the very least. It's going to be a 3 mana counter spell, but it can do other cool things as well. Is that enough for me to play a cancel? Probably not, but I do like the flexibility here. Like if I was very interested in these other 2 modes, then I would definitely run it. It just kind of actually sweet. The can't be blocked this turn actually just allows you to alpha strike very well, but I don't think that's good enough for me to run cancel, but still very cool card. Next up, we have Ecstatic Beauty. This is a 3 mana red sorcery that says exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play those cards until the end of turn. Put 4 time counters on each of those cards that has suspend. And it has suspend for just 1 red mana. So you can pay 1 red mana, exile it, put 4 time counters on it, and then you get to cast it in 4 turns for free. Or you can just hard cast it for 3 mana. I think because it is Impulse Draw and you can only cast it until end of turn, you probably want to suspend it most often so you can get that maximum value out of the cards. But also, if you're in a suspend deck, you don't actually have to worry about casting all those spells immediately. They get to go exiled, suspended, and all that good stuff as well too. And if you just want to hit like a land, you can pay 3 mana, try to hit a land drop, and then if you have enough mana to cast another spell, that's great too. So yeah, this is just a great card for the suspend deck. Looks very straightforward and sweet. Next up, we have another saga. This is an Izzet saga, just 2 mana, a blue and a red, has 3 chapters. The first 2 chapters are Investigate, very easy. And then the third chapter says Heaven Sent deals 1 damage to each opponent. Then if an opponent has 0 or less life, so if you just deal lethal damage with it essentially, draw 7 cards, and then otherwise exile Heaven Sent and you may cast it this turn. So this card is just like a really nice incremental engine that allows you to investigate every single turn if you really want to. 2 turns of investigating, 3rd turn of just pinging everybody. I mean, being able to draw 7 cards is very sweet. Unlikely to actually happen in a game of Commander, but a nice flavor. I assume it's referring to this episode or whatever. And then you can just immediately recast it, investigate again, and just keep doing that over and over again for however long you want. So this card is just like a nice value engine. If you're in a Clue deck, then this card is really, really good. And if you care about casting stuff from exile, this card also could be pretty decent too. Next up, another saga. This is a Selesnya one. The Curse of Fenric. This is a 4-mana Selesnya saga with 3 chapters. Chapter 1, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature that player controls. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green mutant creature token with Death Touch. Chapter 2 is target non-token creature becomes a 6/6 legendary horror creature named Fenric and loses all abilities. And then Chapter 3 is target mutant fights another target creature named Fenric. So I don't know what the point of this card is, other than it's probably a reference to the episode, and probably a very good reference to the episode. It can kind of kill important creatures and gives them worse creatures. You could even like turn an opponent's commander into a 6/6 legendary horror that loses all abilities, and then the Death Touch mutants kills it the turn afterwards. I don't know. It looks like a lot of hoops to jump through. I guess it's actually good, maybe. If you're killing important creatures with all these chapters, I guess. It's good. I don't know. There's so many cards, man. There's so many cards. I don't know. This looks good. And sagas have so much text. I think that's the main problem. There's so much text. How am I supposed to, like, just analyze everything immediately? It looks cool. I'm sure the episode is great. Moving on. All right. We have a land, Gallifrey Council Chamber. And this is a card that I'm actually going to be putting in one of my own decks. It's a legendary land that says when it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana to only cast a Time Lord or alien spell, or activate an ability of a Time Lord or alien. So this card is very good mana fixing, just a very solid land in any Time Lord deck, any alien deck, and for me, most importantly, a Changeling deck. So I'm just going to shove it in my Changeling deck. It taps for mostly mana fixing for most of the time, and it surveils for 1, which is just a nice bonus. And it comes to play untapped. What more can you ask for? It's really nice. Next up, we have a legendary artifact. This is the Pandorica. It's a 3-mana white legendary artifact that says you may choose not to untap the Pandorica during your untap step. And it has an ability, pay 1 and a white, and tap it. Untap another target non-land permanent, then it phases out. It can't phase in for as long as the Pandorica remains tapped, and when the Pandorica becomes untapped or leaves the battlefield, that permanent phases in. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is a cute Pandora's Box reference, I assume, and it's actually low-key very annoying for your opponents, because you could just like tap it, phase out your opponent's commander that they built an entire deck around, and then they have to like scramble to find a removal spell for the Pandorica. You could also use it to like phase out your own creatures in response to a removal spell. So you could use it defensively or offensively, which is actually quite nice. But I don't know if the effects are powerful enough to warrant the mana cost and the activate cost. But it's cute. I like it. It's flexible. Next up, we have the Wedding of River Song. It's a 3-mana white sorcery that says draw 2 cards, then you may exile a non-land card from your hand with a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. Then target opponent does the same. Cards exiled this way that don't have suspend, gain suspend, then you time travel. Oh my gosh, there's so much text. So this is basically a souped up secret rendezvous. So ask Richard what you think about this card. I think it's pretty doo-doo, but obviously if you're in a time travel deck, it actually gets a lot better. So it breaks the symmetry there. Yeah, I think actually this card is way better than Secret Rendezvous. Still not something I would run outside of a time travel deck, but I would actually just run it in a time travel deck, obviously. Yeah, anyway. Next up, we have All of History all at once. It's a 4-mana blue sorcery with time travel and storm. So you get to time travel a whole bunch of times off a big storm turn. So stuff you have exiled with time counters, you're going to remove those counters to cast your spells faster. And then stuff that have vanishing on them, you could add more time counters so they last on the battlefield longer. So it's just really good. This is probably going to be like the sweetest card in your time travel deck. It just does the thing very, very efficiently. Very cool. Next up, we have Flesh Duplicate, which is a powerful clone, actually. It's 2 mana, double blue, for a 0/0 creature shapeshifter rebel, and you may have Flesh Duplicate enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has Vanishing 3 if that creature doesn't have Vanishing. So this is a new Phantasmal Image, which is a very playable card in other formats. I don't really see that often in Commander, but I mean, this one's quite good. It doesn't die if it's ever targeted, but instead it will just kill itself over 3 turns as it vanishes out of existence. But if there's any creature on the battlefield with really powerful ETB triggers or death triggers or whatever that can be, for 2 mana, you get to just copy it and you have that creature on the battlefield for a while and you can prolong its existence by time traveling. So this seems great. This seems like actually a really powerful card. Next up, we have Martha Jones, which is another Doctor Companion. It's a 3 mana blue 3/2 legendary creature human cleric, and it has 2 abilities. Woman Who Walked the Earth. When Martha Jones enters the battlefield, investigate. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, Martha Jones and up to 1 other target creature can't be blocked this turn. So this is pretty sweet for a clue deck. Like if you have a bunch of clue generators, then you can attack very cleanly and give your stuff unblockable. It's not super powerful or anything, but keep in mind, you're also going to have a doctor paired with Martha Jones. So this is not your sole commander or anything like that. So yeah, this is just cool for a clue deck. I like it. Next up, we have Coward and Killer, and this is oriented in a weird way, so I'm going to have to tilt my head. It's a red card, a split card. It doesn't have fuse. You can only cast one side or the other, not both. So one side is Coward. It's 1 and a red, so 2 mana red sorcery that says target creature can't block this turn and becomes a coward in addition to its other types until end of turn, and then you time travel. Or you cast the Killer side, which is a 4 mana red sorcery that says Killer deals 3 damage to target creature and other creatures that share a creature type with it. So the Killer side is pretty good at picking off small utility creatures, but more importantly, it can pick off like an entire board of like saprolings or whatever tokens your opponents are running. And the Coward side, it's just a great way to get around blockers and also time travel a little bit. Both sides are kind of meh to me, to be honest, but the flexibility is kind of nice. It just seems overcosted either way and not really worth the flexibility here, but it's fine. Then we have another Doctor Companion. This is Ryan Sinclair. This is a 3 mana red 2/2 legendary creature human. And it says whenever Ryan attacks, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost if it's a spell with mana value less than or equal to Ryan's power. Put the exile cards not cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is a pretty powerful attack trigger. You do need to attack with a 2/2, so you need to give it evasion or you need to pump it up or whatever. But you can potentially attack and then just start casting spells for free off the top of your library, which is quite nice. This is card advantage and mana advantage, but you have to jump through hoops. You need to boost Ryan's power, that's number 1, and probably give Ryan invasion as well to make sure that you're guaranteeing the card advantage and mana advantage every single time it's attacking. So that seems good, though. That's something that you could definitely be building around. So a very strong companion. Next up, we have a teaser for Ixalan, maybe? I don't know. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. Maybe that's going to be the 3rd Ixalan expansion. They're going to go to space. This is a 6 mana Boros 7/7 creature dinosaur, vigilance and trample. Other dinosaurs you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance and trample. It has to spend 4. You can pay 3 mana, you can pay 5 mana, 3 a red and a white to suspend it with 4 suspend counters on it, time counters on it, and cast it that way. And whenever a time counter is removed from dinosaurs on a spaceship while it's exiled, create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur creature token with flying and haste. So either you can just hard cast this sucker and have a 7/7 vigilance trampler that boosts up your dinosaurs, or you can suspend it and over a couple turns make a bunch of dinosaur tokens with flying and haste, smash in the air, and then eventually you get to cast this for free and it has haste and you smash that way. So the suspend version is probably way better most of the time, but sometimes you just need to have that 7/7 dino immediately and you can hard cast it instead. This card actually looks pretty darn sweet. I like it quite a bit. Next up, we have Regenerations Restored. This is a 2 mana Azorius enchantment with Vanishing 12, which is a lot. So it's going to stick around for 12 turns. My goodness. Whenever one or more time counters are removed from regenerations restored, scry 1 and gain 1 life. Then if it has no time counters on it, exile it. When you do, take an extra turn after this one. So the trick here is to remove all the time counters from this vanishing thing as quickly and efficiently as possible so you can take that extra turn. And then it's a 2-mana extra turn spell, which is pretty darn amazing. So if you have I think there's 2 creatures that just remove all counters off a permanent. I think it's Hex Parasite, and then there's a vampire that has legacy player or whatever that you can just sacrifice it to remove all time counters from it. So if you do that little combo, then you can have a very cheap extra turn spell. Probably not worth it, but that's really cute. And then otherwise, if you don't want to take that extra turn anytime soon, this is just a nice incremental scry engine. So if you're in a deck that cares about scrying, then this will scry 1 every single turn for 2 mana. So that's actually really good. So yeah, this card is actually really sweet. Really cool design. And really interesting to see how you could really use it. Next up, we have Rory Williams, the partner of Amy Pond. It's an Azorius 2-mana 3/3 legendary creature human soldier. It has partner with Amy Pond, so you could have both in the command zone if you want, or because Amy Pond is a doctor's companion, you could have Amy Pond in the command zone plus a doctor, and then just cast Amy Pond and then get Rory from the library into your hand. So whichever you want. You can have Amy Pond and Rory in the command zone together, or you can have Amy and a doctor and Rory in the library. All of it works. First Strike Lifelink. So it's a 2-mana 3/3 First Strike Lifelink. That's actually really good stats. What's the catch? All right. The Last Centurion. When you cast a spell from anywhere other than exile it with 3 time counters on it. It gains Suspend, then Investigate. Okay, so the catch here is that when you cast it from anywhere other than exile, if it could be the command zone, it could be from your hand, it gets exiled, and then you have to stick around in the exile zone with time counters on it for a while. But you do get to investigate, and then eventually enters the battlefield as a 3/3 First Strike Lifelinker, which is not amazing or anything. It's okay, but it's easy value. I mean, it already has partner, so it's not coming by itself. So you can't really expect too much out of poor Rory over here. Next up, we have Sally Sparrow. This is a 4-mana Azorius 2/3 legendary creature human detective. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash. That's very good. And then whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. So giving all your stuff flash is really powerful. Giving a little bit of investigation action is always really nice. So it works really well with Blink action. And I think Sally is from the only episode I ever watched. I watched Blink. I don't know if the main character was Sally. I'm going to assume it was Sally. There's a Weeping Angel behind her. So yeah, I guess it's a Blink reference. I don't know. Anyway, it's a cool card. I like it. All right, so this is the card that I am the most hyped for out of all the cards, I think. Because it goes into my Changeling deck. Spoiler. The Dalek Emperor. So this is a 7-mana Rakdos, 6/6 legendary artifact creature Dalek. And it costs 7 mana, but it can cost as little as 2 mana actually, because it has affinity for Daleks. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each Dalek you control. So it can cost as little as a black and a red when you cast it. And then other Daleks you control have haste, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent faces a villainous choice. That player sacrifices a creature they control, or you create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace. So this card is really sweet. If you have 5 Daleks on the battlefield, you can cast this baby for just 2 mana. It's a 6/6. It gives all your Daleks haste, and then you're going to be making some combination of Daleks, basically 1 per opponent. So a 4-player game, you're going to be making either 3 Daleks, 3 3/3s, or you're making your opponent sacrifice creatures, or some combination of the two. It's all good value for you. This card is super sweet. It works with Changelings, obviously. Changelings are Daleks. So I'm going to put it in my Changeling deck. I think this card is good enough to show up there. It's 2 mana, 6/6 is huge. Give my team haste, and then just get extra value each combat too. That seems great. This card's awesome. Next up, we have yet another saga. Are you kidding me, Wizards? Please. So many sagas, so much text. Please leave me alone. I'm sure Doctor Who fans love it though, so whatever. The Day of the Doctor. I assume these are all just episodes. This is a 5-mana Boros saga. 4 chapters. The first 3 are all the same. Exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary card. You may play that card for as long as Day of the Doctor remains on the battlefield. Put the rest of those exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then finally, on chapter 4, choose up to 3 doctors. You may exile all other creatures. If you do, the Day of the Doctor deals 13 damage to you. All right, so this saga basically draws you 3 legendary cards. So that's pretty darn good. And then finally, it can like wipe the board of opposing creatures. If you have like just 3 doctors on the battlefield, you'll probably have like a couple doctors and then some other creatures, and those will be collateral, but you can keep up to 3 of them. So this is very good in a doctor deck. It does still do 13 damage to you, and that's nothing to laugh at. Even in Commander, where we start at 40 life total, 13 damage is still a lot. But it is a lot of value. 5 mana, over 4 turns, a lot of card advantage, eventually a board wipe, maybe if you want it to be. Card's good. Card is good. It's a lot of value. It's kind of slow, and the board wipe is telegraphed. You don't always have to use it, though. But yeah, in a Doctor deck or a Changeling deck, it could be quite powerful. Next up, we have Idris, Soul of the TARDIS. This is a 3 mana Izzet 3/3 legendary creature, human incarnation. It has Vanishing 3, and it has Imprint. When Idris enters the battlefield, exile another artifact you control until Idris leaves the battlefield. Idris has all activated and triggered abilities of the exiled card and gets +X/+X, where X is the exiled card's mana value. Now, I don't know if this card's good. I think it's bad. I don't know. There's definitely like some shenanigans you're going to be running with it, but I think like if you play this straight, it's like straight up not good. But if it like enables some like shenanigans, some combos, I assume that's where it's going to actually be played. Let me know how you're going to break Idris. I don't think you play this fairly. I could be wrong. It is late in the night. It's almost 8:30 when I'm recording this. So my brain's done, but I don't think you play this fairly. There's probably some broken combo with this. Maybe? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section what we would do with Idris. I have no idea. All right, moving on. Okay, this is a legendary land that actually looks quite sweet. This is Trenzalore Clock Tower. It's a legendary land that you can tap to add 1 blue mana, and you put a time counter on Trenzalore Clock Tower. You can pay 2 mana, 1 in a blue, and tap it to remove 12 time counters from Trenzalore Clock Tower and exile it. Shuffle your graveyard and hand into your library, then draw 7 cards. Activate only if you control a Time Lord. So this is basically like Midnight Clock, the 3 mana blue artifact from Eldraine. It's a mana rock that eventually just cashes itself in, and you can refill your hand. And this is just the same thing, but on a land. That seems actually really good. However, the one catch is you have to have a Time Lord. So either you are in a Doctor deck or you are in a Changeling deck. Those are the only 2 options for you. But like, if you match those criteria, then heck yeah. Instead of paying 3 mana for a Midnight Clock, you just play a land and it's legendary. That's even better because that triggers like Historic Matters stuff. So yeah, this card's actually like really, really good. And I don't know if I can fit a non-mana fixing land into my 5-color Changeling deck, but if I can, I definitely will be putting this into it. Next up, we have Star Whale. Ooh, it's a space whale. That's fun. This is an 8 mana blue 8/8 creature alien whale. It has flying, vigilance. Other creatures you control have ward 2 and has suspend 6. You just have to pay 1 in a blue and then exile it, put 6 time counters on it, and eventually it will enter the battlefield with haste and start smashing people in the air with vigilance with an 8/8 and give all yourself ward. That just seems good. Yeah, if you're in a timey-wimey deck, if you're in a time travel deck, this is just like a slam dunk, I would say. Next up, we have Time Beetle. This is a 2 mana blue 1/1 creature alien insect with Skulk and Parallel Universe. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you time travel. So this is like the thrumming bird of time travel decks, where it has evasion, it has Skulk, it can get in there, and then every single turn is just dealing combat damage. Its main job is to time travel repeatedly every single turn. So if you're in a time travel deck, you want to put it in your Time Beetle. That's easy inclusion there. Next up, we have Sibylline Soothsayer. I don't know how you say that. That's a 3 mana red 3/2 creature human warlock with Temporal Foresight. When it enters the battlefield, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land card with mana value 3 or greater. Exile that card with 3 time counters on it. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. Put the rest of the real cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is your time-traveling Spirited Companion, but better, I guess. 3 mana, 3/2 ETBs, allows you to get a card and puts it in suspend. You get it eventually, but then you don't have to pay the mana cost for it. So that's even better, I would say. Like, imagine if you hit like a 7-drop or something off this. This could be like super insane. So this is probably like the best Spirited Companion they ever made. It is 3 mana instead of 2. You don't get the card immediately, but you don't have to pay the mana cost on it, and it can really be a huge mana discount. So yeah, card is super sweet. Next up, we have Laser Screwdriver. This is a 3 mana colorless artifact. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 1 and tap it, tap target artifact, 2 and tap it, surveil 1, or 3 and tap it, goad target creature. So it's very flexible. It's a 3 mana dork that does extra things. I don't think anything it does is worthy enough to be a 3 mana rock that I would run, but it does do a lot of things. Just not anything super efficiently, but it does do a lot of things. Yeah, so I wouldn't run it. Anyway, moving on. We have the Sonic Screwdriver. This is a 3 mana artifact. Again, it's a 3 mana rock. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 1 mana, tap it, untap another target artifact. So I'm already liking this a lot more. Pay 2 mana, tap it, scry 1, whatever. 3 mana, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn, which I quite like a lot. I like my Rogue's Passages. This one, I would definitely play more often than my Laser Screwdriver. I'm still kind of about it, but if there were certain decks that really care about untapping artifacts, like I don't know, just big mana rocks, I guess, that tap for a lot of mana, then I would see myself actually running Sonic Screwdriver. If I would want a Voltaic Key in my deck, I will want to run Sonic Screwdriver. That's basically how I would evaluate this card. Next up, we have Atraxi Warden. This is a 6 mana white 6/6 creature, Alien Eye. Ooh, it's a flying creature. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target tapped creature, and has to spend 5. You can just pay 1 and a white to do this. So again, if you are in the suspend deck, if you are in the timey-wimey, time travel-y deck, it is very good. Otherwise, I would probably skip over it. And then we have a new land, Ominous Cemetery. It's a land that taps for 1 colorless, and you can pay 5 mana and tap it, exile the cemetery. Target creature's owner shuffles it into their library. I don't like this card. I'd probably put it in a colorless deck because the opportunity cost is so low there. But otherwise, paying 6 mana and then sacrificing or exiling your land to get rid of something is just a lot. Like, you have to be in like a huge mana land deck, I guess, to do it. And it doesn't even sacrifice itself. It exiles itself. So you can't even really abuse it in like a green lands deck. I don't know. I'll put it in a colorless deck. It's fine in a colorless deck, in like a Kozilek deck or whatever, but otherwise, nah. And then we have the Titanic. What? What? This is the RMS Titanic. It's a 4 mana red vehicle. It's a 7/1 legendary artifact vehicle. Flying, trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it and create that many treasure tokens. Okay. It has crew 3. So this thing is just like destined, no matter, even in space, even in real life, it's just going to sink. It's just destined to sink. I guess that's the whole point of this gimmick card. It's actually not bad. You know, like for 4 mana, you smash somebody for 7 and then you make 7 treasure tokens. That's actually good value. I would run like this in like the Pala and stuff for sure. Any like vehicle deck that's in red. Yeah, I'm down. It's a very silly card. I like it. But yeah, it's actually good too. Who would have thought? Next we have Astrid Peth. Yeah, okay. It's a 2 mana white 2/2 legendary creature human. And it says whenever Astrid enters the battlefield or attacks, you create a food token. So it's a food engine. And then it has brand new sky. Whenever you sacrifice a clue or food, Astrid explores. Okay. I like that. So this is like, I would say, a staple for the food deck, I would say. Because it generates food tokens pretty reliably. And then whenever you generate food, or whenever you sacrifice food for whatever reason, you could sacrifice to gain life or sacrifice to other things, you're just exploring passively constantly, either growing Astrid or putting a bunch of lands into your hand. Both are great, and it's for a 2-drop too, so that's actually very good. I would put this in like any of the Abzan food decks that came out recently, like the Frodo decks and whatnot. Yeah, this card's gas. And then we finally get to the end of the previews today. Oh my goodness. I think we got all the timey-wimey cards. I don't even know. I don't know what we got today, honestly. We were supposed to get the timey-wimey deck, and we didn't. We didn't get the deck list. We got a bunch of cards instead. And some of them are clearly not from the timey-wimey deck. Like, a lot of them aren't, actually. There's, like, a lot of historic cards. So that's from a different Doctor deck, I believe. There was some villain cards. So that's definitely not from any of the Doctor decks. I have no idea what we got today. It was a mess. But I hope you liked them. There was a lot of sweet cards. There were definitely quite a few cards here that I thought can see play outside of just, like, plain old Doctor Who decks. So I think I might do a video just covering all the cards that, like, if you don't care about Doctor Who, you can ignore the vast majority of this product, but then look at, like, the top 10 cards that I think will see a lot of play or are worth your attention in just, like, as generic commander cards. And I think that'll be an interesting video to do. So I'll cover one of those things in the future. But yeah, that's a lot of cards. It's late. I still have to edit this, so I'm going to wrap it up. Like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. We're going to be covering all the Doctor Who cards as they're coming out for the rest of the week, so check back tomorrow with a brand new video covering a ton more cards, I'm sure. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to go to edit this video. Okay, bye.